Hello, everyone. My name is Dixie Wicker, and I am a member of the El Paso County Master Gardeners Association here in El Paso, Texas. And with me today is Penny Leslie, who is also a member of El Paso County Master Gardeners Association, but she also is a propagation specialist, okay? She's had extra training and has that after her name. I haven't had any special training, so I don't have anything after my name, okay? All right, we're here today to talk about herbs. Herbs are one of my favorite plants because they're easy to grow, they're enhance the flavor of food. They have, culinary uses. They also, research has shown that many herbs produce antioxidants, which help with diseases. And there's a variety of herbs, and some herbs even make it through the winter. You can grow them indoors or outdoors, in containers or in the ground. Penny's going to talk a little bit about planting your garden. So with no further introduction, I'll turn it over to Penny.
Thanks, Dixie. All right, so the first step before we can get our hands dirty is to actually plan out your garden. So I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. First of all, what do you like to eat? How much space do you have for an herb garden? How much time do you really have to devote to the project? And what is your budget? So once you've decided those things, you can start to think about the next step, which is where you want your garden, inside or outside. So the primary thing to think about with that is that herbs require at least 6 hours of direct sunlight in order to flourish. So you need to check out shadows and whatnot in your yard and your windows as well. Once you decide if you want to go inside or outside, we need to decide how we're going to plant our herbs. So we have a couple of options. We can use containers, which of course you'll use inside, or we can plant them in beds. So Dixie and I are going to talk a lot about containers, but I wanted to mention a couple of things about growing herbs in beds. You can certainly plant them directly into the ground. You don't want to plant them under a tree where there are roots. You want to be sure and check out your sun and see what happens throughout the day to get those 6 hours of light. And then you want to make sure that water is accessible to the plants. If you don't want to put them in the ground, you can put them in raised beds, and there's all kinds of different raised beds, from ones that are directly on the ground to ones that are kind of at table height that help with accessibility issues. So just think about all of those things when you're planting. And then one last thing is whether you're going to plant seeds or transplants. Seeds are great fun, and if you start them early enough, it gives you a little lead time to your herb garden. But in El Paso right now, the best thing to do is to go with transplants because our herbs are ready to be put into the ground. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. Once you have your plan set in your mind, the next thing that you're going to do is prepare your pot or your land. So we're going to talk about pots right now. This is a self-watering pot. It has a little reservoir down here so that the water will flow down in here and you don't have to water quite as much, potentially. The most important thing that you have to remember about pots is they need a drainage hole. Herbs do not like to get their feet wet, so we need to make sure that it can drain through that slightly alkaline rich soil. So in order to protect and keep the soil in, we can, Dixie, can I borrow that?
Yeah.
We can use just a plain old coffee filter and put it in here to kind of cover the holes, or you can use a little bit of screening into the bottom, like a window screen. You can also put rocks in, but you don't have to. And the rocks really help with something that's really lightweight so that the wind doesn't tip the container over. So once you've got your pot ready, and pots are great because you can use any kind of pot. You can use anything for a pot. You can get really creative. So Dixie's going to show us how to prepare the soil once you've chosen your wonderful pot. Dixie?
Okay. All right, it's very important to buy at the box stores a nice potting soil. This one is very loose. It's got a little bit of perlite or vermiculite in it. So you want to have a well-drained, loose soil. And before you plant, you need to put a squirt of dish soap in water, because we're going to pour that water on the soil, get it wet. The dish soap helps to get the soil where it will aerate and the soil will not clump up, and it's better for the roots to be able to expand and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to wet the soil that has a squirt of any kind of dish soap you can use. Then after you put the water in, you get the consistency just to where I need a little bit more, I think, where when you grab it, it sort of stays together, but not completely. You don't want it compact, just like this. It's wet, but it's still movable, and the roots can still move around.
Okay. So we've pre-prepared these pots. We've added a little bit of time-released fertilizer to them and mixed it in with the soil. So there's different kinds of time-released fertilizer that you can use. And now we're ready to start to plant. So I've got 3 herbs that I'm going to put in this plant. This is a self-watering plant container. I have lemon verbena, which gets to be a pretty large plant, so probably at the end of the season and when spring rolls around, I'll probably plant this into a bigger container. So we're going to kind of plan out what I want my little herb garden to look like. This is basil, and basil is wonderful in so many different things. And I think I'm going to put my basil here, and then I've got parsley. So parsley is going to go over there. So if you look at this, it has a thrill, which is the big verbena, a fill, which is the basil. It will come around here, and then eventually this parsley will start to spill over so that you've got a nice arrangement in your herb garden. So now that I know where everything's going to go, I can start to dig. I did want to mention that these gloves are called mud gloves, and they've got a non-porous surface on the palms, so that it's really nice to actually work with the dirt. It'll also preserve your manicure if that's an issue. So let's look at the lemon verbena first, and I'm going to dig a hole where I planned on putting it, and it's going to be about the same depth as this. So in order to get this out of the pot, you just secure it, push it over. You're going to loosen the pot a little bit so you loosen the soil, and there you have it. So you're going to look at the roots, and we've got some nice roots here. I'm going to put this directly into the soil here, and then I'm going to backfill so that there are not any air holes between the root ball and the rest of the pot, so that it'll get consistent watering. And I'm not going to really press hard, but I'm going to press down a little bit so it'll stay put. Next, I think I will plant the basil. And if you notice, the basil has 3 little plants all in a row. And basil gets pretty tall. It gets to be about 1.5 feet or 2 feet tall, and kind of gets bushy if you pinch it back, which is what we want to do. So I'm going to try to separate this root ball so that I can plant 2 basil plants in here and then save 1 for another place. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to loosen up the soil, tip it over, and this has a wonderful root ball, if you can see that. I'm going to pinch out the little fine fibers of the root, and very gently I'm going to pull a little bit and pry these apart. Whoops. So you can see that it's got a nice root ball on both these. Dixie, do you mind taking that?
Yeah.
Thank you. So then I'm going to create another hole here in my prepared soil. And again, I want the soil level to meet where it was in the pot and where it is on the transplant, and then backfill. So I've got some soil there. You can see how it's kind of filling out. Basil is You want to get a nice compact plant when you do your transplants, and then you want to just pinch off the little tops of the basil or many of the herbs so that it will then bush out this way, and you'll have lots of basil plants. Also, once it gets a flower, you want to pinch that flower off unless you like it for decoration, because it will suck the energy from the leaves, which is what you're going to use for cooking. And my final one is parsley. If I were to buy this today, I'd probably look potentially for another one because it's kind of yellowed out. But it does have some pretty green growth, and I think it will do fine. I don't see any insects or disease in there. It's a little bit dry, so I'm going to moisten it before I put it into the pot. So one way to do that is to take a container. You want to have enough water to fully submerge the plant. So I'm submerging it, and you might be able to see some bubbles coming out, and that means that they're little air pockets. And when you soak it enough, the air pockets go away, the bubbles stop, and you can plant it. So I'm going to turn it over to Dixie and let her talk to you about the ones that she's going to plant, and then we'll come back and get this one after it's fully soaked.
Okay. All right. I chose 3 herbs that don't like water on their leaves. It's thyme. This one is thyme, and it happens that there's different kinds of all the herbs. There's different varieties. This one happens to be not lemon thyme, but French thyme. This one is rosemary. And rosemary, you can actually, if you have a rosemary plant, you can actually cut off some stems, put them in water, and it will take close to 2 months to germinate. I did do it, and I took like 3 or 4 stems, and 2 or 3 of them actually did get roots on it, but it takes a long time, and you do need to change the water every couple of days too. But anyway, and this was done that way in our greenhouse that we have, that Master Gardeners have. The third one is sage, and it also doesn't like its leaves wet. So the only one, I don't have anything other than, and even the rosemary doesn't get terribly tall. So I'm not like Penny, and I have the frill and the over the side, although this one will go over the side. All right, my soil is ready. My plants, well, this one, Penny, let me have the water thing, because I want to plant my thyme first. I'd like to share with you.
I'm going to push it all the way under.
All the way under, okay. I also have mud gloves on too, because I get a manicure every 2 weeks, okay? And you can imagine what gardening every day does to a manicure, okay? All right, I think that's good now, but let me let it drain. Thyme is such an interesting plant with its little tiny leaves on it, unlike basil, whose leaves are large. All right, do you think I can try it now? Mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot to do my hole first, okay. All right, I need to do the hole about a little bigger than the size of the pot and as deep as the pot too. I make a mistake sometimes of not getting my stuff deep enough, so I'll try to do it. All right, there, it seems like it's real happy. Okay, and then I want to pack around it, and it looks like I did get it deep enough this time. Okay, now the next one I'm going to do is the rosemary, and the rosemary will get quite large, so I will probably transplant it, maybe at the end of the summer into a pot by itself, because it lasts all winter. It won't die down with cold weather. Whoop! Man, we almost had an accident. That would have been bad. I don't know why the dirt is coming off of this one. rosemary is very, very hardy. And rosemary is so nice. I make roasted potatoes just with some olive oil and put rosemary on it for dinner. A lot of times it's quite good. It flavors very nicely. I haven't found, the last one is sage, and I haven't found a lot of uses for sage, but I'm going to try. I read someplace that it's good on an omelet, so maybe I'll try that. All right, and then I want to pack it. Looks like I got it deep enough as well. Oh, my rosemary's sort of leaning over. The rosemary, wherever the sun is, the leaves go toward the sun, so I've been rotating it. So I'll have to rotate the pot now that I'm going to have it outside. All right. I think that's it for me, Penny.
Okay, all right.
Now
Well,
we're going to top them.
Let me finish up with my parsley here,
okay.
my little spill. And I think it's been fully moistened. I'm going to do that. This is a pretty deep one, but it has some nice root ball as well. So make sure I can get it all the way in. You're going to dig your hole a little bit wider than your pot so that you can backfill. And we want to make sure that, again, all of those little air pockets are taken out so that they will water well. Okay. And the fourth plant that I had, I'm just going to talk about briefly, is a chamomile plant. And I thought it would be really pretty in here, and I'd never seen it before. But when I researched it, I found that it probably needs its own container. And I found out a lot of interesting things about this herb. So I will probably plant it in another pot. And the reason I mention that is don't be afraid to try new things. Just research it a little bit and do your best. They say the best gardeners kill a lot of plants. So don't be afraid. Try new things. So the last part of this is to put some mulch on it. And the reason that we use mulch is to prevent the soil from drying out so quickly, especially in El Paso with the sun, or even inside with the air conditioning. It will make your soil dry out. So this is just peat moss. It's nice particularly for inside because it makes a nice clean little finish to your pot. And Dixie has a different kind of mulch. So while I'm finishing this up, Dixie, you want to show them yours?
Yes. This is called river rock, but it's very, very small. And what I like about it is the colors. You know, there's white, brown, beige, and gray. So it will make the pot look very interesting from the top. And like Penny said, it helps retain the moisture. And remember that these three plants don't like water on their leaves, okay? So, you know, you've got to do it either with a gentle hose, just water where the river rock is, or if you have, whoop, I put a lot there. But anyway, all right. All right, see how pretty that looks?
It looks like a little terrarium.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. So the last thing you're going to do once you get your mulch in is to water down your plants just a little bit. It takes any little excess air spaces out so that when you do water, it goes evenly. So I'm just going to pour a little bit around each plant and water it in. Then of course you'll clean off all your stuff from your pot. And there you go.
Okay, I'm water. Oh, I'd forgotten, did the leaf on the rosemary. Sorry, rosemary.
Well, plants are forgiving, unlike people. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yes. Here, after I emphasized it and put the gravel in, and then I forget.
So the best thing you can do to be able to maintain your pots is to be able to use your herbs. Put your shadow on your plants every single day. Check on them. Use your herbs. Cut them off. Pinch them off. It encourages their growth. Fertilize them as the directions suggest. And check them daily. Inside or outside in El Paso during the summer, we know things get hot. You can use your God-given water meter here and go down into the soil about an inch with your finger, and if it comes back wet, you know you've got enough water in there. and you don't need to water. But do keep an eye on it, especially as our temperatures get higher. And I guess that's kind of what we're going to talk about as far as caring for the plants. But Dixie wanted to share some more of her culinary tips with you and uses. So Dixie?
Okay. All right, as everyone knows, herbs add a nice touch to many dishes, not only for color, but for flavor. There are many of them, basil, rosemary, thyme, and parsley, that are good in soups or stew. And then parsley also adds a nice color. Sage and thyme, I think I mentioned that they are good if you make an omelet on Sunday morning for breakfast. And rosemary, I do oftentimes roast some potatoes with just olive oil and salt and pepper and then put rosemary on. Some of the herbs, and I'm going to try to remember, you can put in the last 20 minutes of cooking. And then some of the herbs, and I know that thyme and dill are ones that you should just put in as you serve them. But there's other ones that, and you'll have to maybe experiment since I can't remember which ones they are, that you put in the last. I think oregano, rosemary, you can put in when you put the potatoes in the oven. I oftentimes do. So anyway, so you'll have to experiment, but it's a real thrill to be able to go out to your herb garden and harvest something. Oh, and I want to tell you one other thing that I learned about, and I've tried it. If you have a Ziploc, and if you perforate it with a scissors and just put a couple of holes in the bag, and it's best to harvest your herbs first thing in the morning. So if you're not going to need it till in the evening, if you'll harvest it and then wash it and then put it in a perforated plastic bag, put it in the refrigerator in your hydrator, and it will be fine for several days. I did this with oregano yesterday. I washed it and I put it in a bag last night, and look at today, it still looks just like I just harvested it. So this is a great tip that I just learned recently and tried. So think about that too, because basil has so many uses and parsley does too. And so think about a plastic bag, put a couple of holes in it, and wash the herb, put it in the hydrator for 2 or 3 days. All right, that concludes, I think.
Thank you, Dixie. So remember that planning, preparing, and nurturing your herbs are going to bring you lots of joy. You're going to be able to get out into the sunshine. You'll be able to interact with the environment. And best of all, you'll have healthy and delicious meals. So on behalf of the El Paso County Master Gardeners, I want to say thank you for watching our video today, and hope you have many, many happy hours of gardening. Please follow us on YouTube, on our channel. Like us, share, subscribe to our channel. It's EPC_Master Gardeners. Hope to see you in the garden soon. Bye-bye.
Wait, Penny, I forgot to say goodbye. Bye, and thank you, everyone. Enjoy.